you've added another incredible film to your canon now, and so once again, truly excited about it. Love the acting, love the cinematography, love the sound. So we're gonna have a fun conversation about all of it, and then after that, we're gonna open it up for a Q&A, so you guys also get a chance to ask a few questions, okay? Michael, I really want to start out with the fact that number one, this film and then the film that's playing after it, Ali, right? When you're looking at the biopic, you're really doing something very special and very unique that not every filmmaker does. You know, you're sort of really looking at a moment in time. So I really want you to talk about sort of why you picked this particular moment of Enzo's life and why Enzo Ferrari to begin with. Like, why are you so fascinated and in love with his story?
We're talking about the last you said about Enzo. There was it's quasi-accidental. I was fascinated with how innovative he was, and I was really fascinated initially with the mentality of a race car driver and that romantic aspirational impulse that drives him forward. He's all the defenses, all of the kind of assertive wit, all because are based on somebody who's basically insecure, and I think today we would say traumatized in a funny way. I'm saying that because all these characters have nothing to do with psychology. They're all pre-psychology. They don't think of themselves that way. They didn't at the time. When he was in 1918, he was on a park bench in the cold and having just been turned down for a job at Fiat, and which he had his heart set on. He had lost his father a year earlier in World War I, and lost his brother, with whom he was very close. He said about his brother that his brother took him with him everywhere, which is something that Adam and I really zeroed in on, and that's why the last line in the film, to Aero, and bereft in a 1918 in Italy, post-World War I, where any transcendence through these static class hierarchies are very, very difficult. He asked himself one question, which is, who shall I be in this world? Which is a very romantic notion that he could transcend and become what we wanted to be. And the answer he gave up was, I want to be a race car driver, which is like saying I want to be an astronaut and go to the moon in 1970. And so that drive forward, kind of key to understanding who this man is. But the reason why, because the compression of a fascinating life, a very complex individual with this complex, irresolvable relationship with Lara, with Lena, with the second family, all of who he was and all who he's going to become all collides in this 1 3-month period. And so the idea of, anyway, that's the real attraction to Ferrari. And then impulse and civilian calls in the middle-aged man to the kind of racing, the addictive, terrible joy, dangerous passion that he talks about. It's that sense that you're on the track, and you know at a certain point, you can tell because there's a crack in the pavement or something, here's when I'm supposed to brake, start braking in a straight line, here's my downshift, here's my turn-in point, can I go faster, can I brake later, can I carry more speed through this turn, and it's perilous, because particularly in these years, one mistake and you're dead. And that pathological kind of very emotional impulse to push yourself forward and engage in something that's perilous, that is at the core of these guys, and anybody who's done any racing knows that feeling, and that's so there's also attraction. I'm wandering around a little bit, but these are some of the reasons why I wanted to do the movies.
No, I love it. And one of the things is also sort of looking at the relationship and his relationship with Laura and with Lena. And can you talk about your sort of approach to sort of really understanding what that meant and the time as well, because it was really him having these two families.
What fascinated me is they both have lived through this horrible trauma of the death of their child, the muscular dystrophy. There's no recovering from death of the child. This cloying term of healing. There's no healing. Your child dies. Given where the romance began, he writes that he fell head over heels with her in 1922 when she was this vivacious cabaret singer, and extroverted, really unusual, and we find her now a mother who's lost her son, and trapped in her circumstances. Divorce isn't possible, it's not even on the menu. With a man who now discovers she has a complete other family, but she's locked in her present and contained in her past. She can't progress out of it, so she is aggressively has these rules of the road that she's trying to maintain to have some sense of order. She's still that very self-confident, very strong, proud, primal power that she has. He, on the other hand, is in the present and is in ways divorcing himself. He's only views towards the future. So there are these separate silos of grief that will never connect, and that's the circumstances of Lara. Lena is an equally complex character. It's quieter, but she's an equally complex character. She was upper middle class, came from a very solid family. She was very contemporary. We spent time with her niece, who everybody said is just like her. And we spent a lot of time with Piero Ferrari, and he was able to talk a lot about his mother and how she was angry at Enzo, what she would do, and she is out of defense and very aggressive commitment to her son is maintaining this relationship, and Enzo was the love of her life. There was a rapport between them that's absolutely visible. When I saw some pictures of them 20 years after the events here, when they're both living in the apartment, and you can just see these two people from the late 1970s sitting next to each other, and you just feel the rapport in that black photo. So there was something special about her that she would be in this, allow herself to be in the second family. Vittorio De Sica also had a second family that's returned Italian, the son in waiting. That's the son who's waiting for the father to come home. Maybe he will come home, maybe he won't come home. And so you can imagine how it is to come up in that kind of a family situation. So here are these two very different women, kind of Ingrid Bergman, like Lena Lardy and Lara, so that's what.
And obviously you have an incredible cast: Adam, Penelope. I mean, just really truly sort of brought those characters to life. And the other character, to me, always in the film is the city of Modena. Can you talk a little bit about shooting there and how, what were some of the discoveries you found that kind of shifted the actors as well a little bit?
Everything is shot in Modena, and except the mountains, which are ground Sasso Mountains, about an hour and a half north of Rome. And there's some interiors in Reggio Emilia, which is about 20 minutes away. But the exterior of Enzo's house is Enzo's house. The Storchi Opera is the Storchi Opera. It is next door. The barbershop is around the corner. It's the barbershop that Enzo went to. Was completely unchanged. The guy shaving Adam is the son of the barber who shaved Enzo. He's sitting in the same chair. I mean, so everything had a kind of a Pirandello-esque kind of reality to it. And the cobblestone streets are the same streets. And so there was an osmosis for all of us, for myself particularly, but also for Adam, for Penelope, for Shailene. We had numerous vendors at Piero's house. He still lives in Castelvetro. And so, you would meet somebody and get a haircut. Some guy would walk in, and the old man would walk in and said, I want to introduce myself. I was Lara's doctor until the end of her life, and took care of Enzo as well. And then we got to know him, that he had letters that no one had ever seen before. They were very amorous, that Enzo wrote to Lara towards the end of her life in 1977, 78. And so, you realize I mean, Ferrari is one of the most powerful brands in the world, not when you're in Modena. In Modena, it's just the home team. And you meet people who work at the factory, their fathers work at the factory, everybody has anecdotes, and it's a very different environment, but it was fabulous to be there for 6 months.
I love that, and I want to talk to you a little bit now also about the visual language of the film. Your collaboration with Eric, and can you talk a little bit about sort of your thought process as you all are working together, and then also sort of how you were thinking about shooting all the racing scenes as well?
Well, Eric Messerschmidt is a fantastic lighting cameraman in the European sense, and that is somebody who truly paints with light. And I think one of his biggest assets is that he started as a gaffer. So there's been a trend maybe in the last 5-6 years to kind of passive illumination, which I loathe. To me, I mean, Aero is lighting. And Eric is so facile with it. So I was very interested in Caravaggio's painting and how light appears, where it's like an environment is lit, not the people move through the light. So the light's independent of the people, and that's a very, very important notion we had. Roberto D'Angelis operates, I've been working with him as a camera operator since 2009. I operate sometimes, and with Eric, we were able to move lights around very, very quickly, and he somehow magically had a helium-filled balloon illuminating something that just went up in like 10 minutes. And then Pietro Scalia, the editor, did amazing work, particularly in all these dialogue scenes that we have. And then Maria Jurkovic, the brush designer, we had a very specific monochromatic palette that I wanted for all the dramatic scenes, where it's all not monochromatic from the black and white, but it's like tone on tone on tone. If you think about Enzo's bedroom that Laura walks in at the very beginning of the picture, that's all that's very intentional, because in some cases the story points get resolved in the racing. So when I cut to the racing, I wanted that to be extremely different, very oppositional. The primary reds, very agitated camera work, and trying to be experiential with the racing.
I mean, Michael, you're so I know that research and detail and truth is very important to you when it comes to your filmmaking style, and so how do you feel that sort of translates to all of the different parts? So in terms of the sound, right? So when you're thinking of sound and you're having that sort of the truth in the sound, right. Can you tell everybody? I mean, I have heard sort of like some of the tricks that you did, but I think it's really important for people to understand why that truth comes through in so many different levels.
It's a fairly large question, but that's a larger way to answer it. What's the risk of being extremely boring?
No, not at all. I think everybody wants to hear all the details.
I think that there's, when I do a lot of research in the beginning, which to me is an adventure, it's hardly work. I mean, I can't imagine, why anybody would want to do it any other way. And you don't waste time on things that aren't actionable. You get actionable research, and you get deeper and deeper into it. And for Adam to have the very sophisticated understanding how a Lampredi V12 engine actually worked, a full competition engine worked, and you start to see the miracle of this thing, which is like looking at the inside of a really fine watch and understand that there's an energy source on the inside that's making it all go, and how revolutionary that must have seemed in the 1920s to have something that worked that reliably and could do what it was doing 7,000 times a minute. And the advances were such that in 1957, the cars made a lot of power. The rest of the technology wasn't keeping up with that in terms of the brakes and Aero tires and everything else. So they made enough power to drive these cars at 170 miles an hour, which was the estimated speed Di Portago was going when he crashed. But deep diving into that, and even more importantly, aside from the obvious stuff, like in the material world, what kind of posters and what street furniture looked like in 1957 in Modena. Aside from that, the really fascinating thing for myself and for us is period authentic attitudes, period authentic psychology. What was marital life in northern Italy typically like in 1957? What was a woman like Lara's expectations? What was a typical family pattern after she discovered the flagrant infidelity of her husband, and then people tell us, oh, it's very, very simple. She moves him into the small bedroom and she takes charge of the money and he can go off and do what he wants. So this is a certain kind of a typical thing that you would hear from people who are much older, about what the typical response would have been in a moment at the time. The system, the value system, what was the authority system? What did Enzo, who was a reverend, but he's a reverend against something. So what are the institutionalized, authority system of the Catholic Church, and there's also the Italian Communist Party, both originally ideological, and both of those he would have been a reverend. So that it shapes the color of everything. So when Enzo has a little line that just goes by as a kind of a quip, it's enough to make the Pope weep. That actually based in something that we came to understand about Enzo. So.
I love that, Michael. I think that detail is always really important, and so many times we don't really sort of get to understand all of the little pieces of detail that go into the film. So I think that's really important to know. And I really do want to talk to you though about your sort of approach to sound. Tell me a little bit about your approach to sound in the film.
We built mathematically perfect replicas of the race cars that were actually, we built 11 cars, not the single-seater Maserati that Jean Marais drives in the beginning. That's Nick Mason, Pink Floyd drummer's car. That's actual car. But the ones we were using, so they're mathematically perfect, but they have contemporary drivetrains and computer designed tubular chassis underneath the skin that we could engineer into those about 30 or 40 hard mounts, so I could mount camera systems through the skin of the car onto the car. All this was all well prefigured. But the sound of the real engines is unbelievable, and that's what you're hearing, because like we often go back and redo, do ADR, go back and we might have an actor come in and post and lip sync something, and some actors like Adam or Al Pacino happen to be fantastic at it. We did the same thing with the sounds of these cars, always planned to. So the engines you're hearing are full competition V12s from that period, and they have F1 races or something. There's a very dramatic sound. It's both violent, it's intimidating, it's alluring. It speaks a certain kind of savage power that's also quite beautiful. And so when we went back and found a railway tunnel in England that was brick, and so that we could take 12 microphones on one of on a real car and drive it through that. And the way this engine sound reverberated over the walls, we then laid in with all the gear changes and Ravenna when they're driving through the narrow streets, that kind of thing.
I love that. And we have time for a few questions. So, right